This is chapter 2 of the Manipulated Mind. We are in video number 4. He ends by saying, disordered brain function is indeed easily produced in any man. No amount of willpower can prevent its occurrence. Psychologist Juste Merleau draws on psychoanalytic and conditioning theory to explain the brainwashing of the American soldiers. He coined the term menticide to describe it. Merleau was a one-time chief of the Netherlands Forces Psychology Department who became an American citizen in 1950. He was called as an expert to give evidence to the military inquiry on the Colonel Schwabel case. Colonel Schwabel, an officer of the U.S. Marine Corps, confessed in Korea that America had been carrying on bacteriological warfare against the enemy, citing supposed missions, meetings, and strategy conferences, as well as naming names. Merleau's position is that successful menticide techniques make full use of people's deep underlying guilt feelings and their unconscious need to be conditioned by and conform to traditional patterns. He believes people fear the freedom and the conflicts that complete autonomy brings. He actually claimed that the Chinese capitalized on the findings of Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov in regard to conditioned behavior. Pavlov discovered that he could make dogs salivate when they heard a bell. By ringing a bell whenever he gave them food, he led them to associate the two events. He had conditioned an unnatural response. He went on from this discovery to find out much about conditioned behavior and the circumstances that could facilitate or impede it. One such finding that Merleau believes the communists picked up was the fact that conditioning could most easily be effected if the process was carried out in a quiet environment with few distracting stimuli. Political victims, therefore, were more easily conditioned if kept in isolation from each other. It was Pavlov who first found that some animals learn more quickly if they are rewarded for doing so by affection or the giving of food, whereas others responded more effectively if they suffered a painful penalty for mistakes. The differences, Merleau suggests, are likely to be related to the nature of earlier conditioning by parents. As in people, the effect might be that one person could resist indefinitely in the face of punishment, whereas he could easily be won over by rewards. Interrogators could not use rewards and punishments indiscriminately if they wanted results. They knew that they had to find out first which category their prisoner belonged to. The use by the Chinese of boring, repetitive routines was based, says Merleau, on the Pavlovian finding that any kind of previous conditioning, no matter how strong, could be rendered ineffective, inhibited by boredom. Finally, he suggests that the Chinese developed a suggestion made by Pavlov that weak secondary stimuli could also have conditioning qualities, the tone in which words are spoken being as effective as the actual words used for shaping behavior. Pavlov didn't pursue this idea of thought far, but in the 1950s the role of linguistics in mass indoctrination was studied by other Russian physiologists. Merleau is careful to state, however, that it is too simplistic to believe that permanent changes can be made to a person's thoughts and behavior just by straightforward application of Pavlovian theories of conditioning. He does believe that it can be a powerful means for capitalizing on the deeper emotional insecurities of man once aroused. For instance, in isolation, when a prisoner is closed off from the world and deprived of the usual range of stimuli from the senses, his mental activity changes. He starts to dwell on long-forgotten anxieties that rise to the surface, and his fantasy life grows more real than his real life. In that state he is vulnerable, as he cannot check the validity of his feelings and fantasies against ordinary reality. In effect, far from saying that conditioning of behavior is the main thrust of brainwashing techniques, Merleau emphasizes that a human being's own basic drives and needs can lead him unwittingly to take a part in the brainwashing process. Need for companionship doesn't disappear when a guard or an interrogator is the only person available who could possibly offer it. Few personalities, he says, can resist the need to yield if they are suffering overwhelming loneliness. The first step towards yielding may well be that the prisoner, when in isolation and convinced by the enemy that everyone has deserted him, accepts and even welcomes the jailer as a substitute friend. Similarly, the victim may have to pay for his capitulation, his, to himself, unforgivable need to draw comfort and friendship from whatever source he can by becoming even more cruel to himself than the inquisitor could be. This passive attempt at annihilating the enemy adds even more stress to an already intolerable load. The prisoner is fighting himself as well as his captors, leaving himself doubly weakened. Just as successful brainwashing cannot be achieved by the cold application of techniques that take no account of the prisoner's personality, his fear, insecurities, and basic needs, so, says Merleau, training soldiers to withstand physical tortures is for similar reasons ineffective as a method to help them resist being brainwashed by captors. It is not physical torture that is the most effective weapon of brainwashing. The very teaching of evasive techniques to withstand torture can itself induce psychological reactions in the soldiers so trained that can work against the resistance, not for it. The aroused anxiety and the dreaded anticipation, knowing what may happen, can lead a prisoner to capitulate all the sooner. It is only by applying effective mental strategies that anyone can resist, and those mental strategies have to be drawn from a balanced perspective on life. Without that perspective operating in ordinary daily life, they cannot be pulled out of the hat, ready to apply when or if one suddenly finds oneself in a powerful, coercive, and unnatural milieu. See Merleau's Mental Seduction and Menticide. And that's chapter 2. That was part 4. And in the next video we will pick up with part 5. And this chapter will take several videos to complete. It's a rather long chapter. So stay with me, tune in, see you there.